Hello, good afternoon to my friends in the UK and Europe, and good morning to my same colleagues in Americas. My name is Tommy Lee, VP of Sales for Fanvil, based here in the States. I want to thank you all for your valuable time in sharing what is our last of the 4 series of going over our management cloud system. Just to give those who maybe have come on for the first time, this is a service that Fanvil provides to our partners free of charge to really allow you to sort of manage your deployments from one central location. This last of the 4 series, we're going to go end up focusing on things like reporting. And things like reporting, like statistical analysis and system analysis, is really focused around really the main page when you log on, and I'm going to show how that is done later on in the slide set. And as well, for the most part, most of these changes really involve kicking off remote diagnostics to go ahead and manage devices. You know, we all face out there when we go ahead and deploy these projects where we deploy them in locations where there is no IT staff. And sometimes when you go in and get into these little trouble situations, it's very difficult to go ahead and get statistics that you need to sort of make a decision whether you have to go upgrade or replace the device or what have you. But this allows you to kind of do that at the very least. And I'm going to couple that with a demonstration as well. And this demonstration is something that I'm going to do part way while I'm in the middle of the slide to kind of give you an idea of what it feels like to be online. So before I get started, let's do some house cleaning for the most part. For questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter your questions in your question box in the GoToWebinar client. I'll go ahead and address those questions at the end of the session. And for those that I cannot answer, you know, I suggest that you give me your contact information, and I'll assign somebody so that make sure that, you know, your questions do get answered before we leave. In addition to that, I also have handouts that I put a PDF file. If you go to your client in the web forum, you can find a PDF version of this handout so that you don't have to jot down any notes. A soft version would be available for you to go ahead and move on with this. So with that aside, I'm going to move forward to one slide that I do that's going to really give people who may have encountered Fanvil for the first time. For those who know Fanvil very well, I appreciate your patience. What I'm going to start off with is just really an overview for those people who really are coming on for the first time. Then I'm going to kind of go over the key features, which is really statistical analysis, which is more of a deep dive into our dashboard situation. And then I'm going to couple that with a couple of on-screen demos, giving you an idea of the type of flexibility and the type of things that you can do with the dashboard screen, and then end up with a quick Q&A. And so with that said, let's go ahead and move on. So let's go over the overview. For those who have encountered Fanvil for the first time, Fanvil is really a SIP endpoint manufacturer. We don't develop a PBX switch, whether it's hosted or on-prem. We work very hard in establishing close partnership with those leaders that are in the marketplace to really be their selective endpoint, or at least be on their menu, so that should a partner choose to go with Fanvil, you can go ahead and design all of the endpoints that we put together. They could really be divided into 4 separate categories. One is the SIP desk phone, which is really one of our most popular lines. We build a series of business phones here that really highlight everything from value series to executive level series, ranging everything from Linux-based type devices all the way up to Android-based type devices. In addition to business phones, we also have hospitality phones here as well. Even though this is one model, we have several models when you do a deep dive and look at our entire portfolio, but this is just really an overview, giving you the spectrum of the solutions that we bring into the marketplace. Speaking of desk phones and many of the other units, Fanvil is also a very large ODM and OEM manufacturer as well. In fact, we kind of manufacture for many of the people that play in this marketplace. So for those who aren't familiar with Fanvil, we've been in the marketplace building these devices for many, many, many years. And that, we decided to come out with our own name and our own brand to kind of really compete in this marketplace. In addition to desk phones, we also have SIP door access security devices. I mean, these are devices that people can go ahead and expand beyond just voice and add voice into the incoming gate or the entranceway to any people's office. So when you upgrade their audio system, you also upgrade everything that's attached to it. And very often on the outside, you have some businesses that actually have these systems that allow you to gain card access or key entry points, and you can go ahead and log into an existing device or come in something brand new to allow for entryway and getting access to a system. Not only do we do outdoors in many different environments, from commercial, industrial, all the way to ruggedized endpoints, we have solutions that meet everything. In addition to that, we also have indoor stations as well, because when somebody presses a keypad, it could work automatically if they have a card. But we also have indoor panels that, in the case of a multi-dwelling unit, you might have a panel that's inside the apartments that can see who's at the door. Is it the postal service person? And you could just push a button and that person could get in. And you could have a great screen that could see all that has happened. In addition to that, we also have SIP intercoms, and SIP intercoms is really more of a simplified device that have video, non-video versions, 1, 2 buttons, designed for many different environmental requirements as well. So everything from indoor commercial to outdoor ruggedized units to really meet whatever environment that you might want to introduce these intercoms to. And again, all these common thread is really they're all SIP endpoint devices. Last but not least, we also have SIP public address. One of the things that people encounter when they upgrade from their business telephone system is very often many of the legacy providers provided support for a PA system. What do you do with the PA system? One option is to go ahead and upgrade their speaker system into an IP system, which would work, but that's also a very costly option. One of the things you can do is work with our PA series like PA2, PA3, to really inject a SIP-based gateway onto their analog system, so that if they have a working amplifier as well as a working PA system, you could take advantage of that and provide a SIP gateway into it, so that you can allow them to leverage the working equipment that's already there and make it work on the SIP device. And of course, we have control systems that you can provide monitoring devices as well. Now, for the focus of this webinar today is really our management system. In the past, we've always gone ahead and issued to our partners a downloaded system where you can actually require you to have a server and provide these hosted systems. Effective June of this year, we came out with a cloud-based system, basically taking away any hardware requirements that you might have, so that you can just receive a link from either Fanvil or any one of Fanvil's authorized distributors to be able to hand you this link, so that you can go ahead and actually deploy this link within one day and begin really kicking around with it. I can kind of teach you in theory how these things work, but the way you really get working is really kind of getting into the system and getting 1 or 2 phones operational by your desk side or in a lab. And once you do that, you get 1 or 2 of these devices working, then you have the template and you've done 90% of the work to really move on and go from one deployment into 10, 20, hundreds of phones all at the same time via auto deployment. Now, there are 2 parts to this FDMS system. One is the FDMCS system, which is just a redirection server. And when you go ahead and register for the cloud-based management system, we automatically provide you with an automatic redirection server that you can enable or disable based on your particular usage. Now, you may want to disable it if you're already very comfortable with working with the provisioning service that's provided by your PBX provider. So if your PBX provider is providing you with a system that provides you with a great provisioning tool, feel free to use that. And then you can use our redirection service separately to be able to provide you with that redirection service. So when you plug in that phone from the outside world on the internet, that phone now belongs to you, and then you take control of that specific MAC address or MAC addresses so that it'll go to their provisioning service, or you can use ours depending on what type of cloud-based or land-based system that you have. So with that said, let me just kind of go ahead and give you some of the ideas here. This is just a little expansion of what we did before. Formerly, we actually provided a download system that we call FDMS, and now we've gone to FDMCS. Sorry for the alphabet soup there, but nonetheless, we have a cloud-based management system that really is cloud-based. But we also recognize that some clients may have some large customers that demand to have, no, we don't want any of our data faced in the cloud. We also can provide an enterprise system where we can allow them to have the system hosted on their own server as well, because many of the future enhancements is going to be put right on this FDMCS system moving forward. So, but that could be done on a case-by-case basis. So bring those cases up to, your local Fanvil representative, and we'll be more than happy to go ahead and do that. And obviously, of course, all of the different, in the cloud-based, we support all the TLS security so that we can keep all of the data that you have safe and secure with us as well. We could talk about the benefits, but really, I think the major benefit here is really saving time, because once you're able to basically go through the boot camp and understand how the system works, deployment of 1, 2, or 3 is really the same as doing 100, 200, or 300, because you can program these devices in advance, and you can work together along with our distribution channel to get you a whole map full of MAC addresses that when they're shipped to you, you could all of a sudden import these MAC addresses into your system and then configure them in the past, so that once you go ahead and deploy these phones to your remote site, they will then be able to plug it into your office and then be able to go ahead and boot these things up remotely. And also, it'll also allow you to do a monitoring service as well. I talked about provisioning on the earlier slides, but you could also use this management system to basically play a passive monitoring role, that you don't have to use it to provision, because when you provision with 2 different systems, it could create a little bit of conflict, so that, what do you want to do? And you might have 2 systems that battle each other. We've been down that road, so I would choose your system carefully and just pick what type of provisioning you can use. But the management system we have here can actually play a management monitoring role to allow you to do some remote, debugging and everything. This is more of a pictorial version of what I just mentioned earlier. Not only can we provide a cloud-based system into many remote areas, but not only is it just limited to phones, but we could also manage our intercom and door access systems as well. They're not as high volume, but when you go ahead and deploy intercoms in the 20 to 50 range, once you do one, then by definition, you can go ahead and deploy that same template in modifying your time zones, your specific IP address, your SIP addresses. All of those things that you routinely do in deploying each of these can be done automatically, and then you could be able to monitor the functionality and performance of each of these devices. Now we talk about the endpoints. Even though we introduced a cloud system that's based in June of this year, we also support many of the legacy product lines. I can go over some of the legacy lines in the screens moving forward, but this is just a snapshot of many of the new products that we have. So when we have a new developed product, we're going to automatically integrate it into the system so that it recognizes their MAC addresses, and then you can immediately go ahead and manage these things moving forward. So just a quick snapshot. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the last of 4 series. This is the September 8th through 9th, where we can go ahead and go through statistical analysis and system analysis. Back in July, when we brought the system in, this session here allowed you to really organize the different partners and organizations to basically fit your business model, followed by how do you go ahead and organize these devices and management configuration systems, and then all of a sudden, how do you set up the SIP accounts that are located inside there to make it easier to deploy. And the last but not least of this session, this is kind of giving you the overview of what it really all this data means and summary of reports. And I'm going to go over really the idea of how do you go ahead and close this and where do you gain access, because all of these sessions are going to be stored in our video training library. And that's going to be available on the support from our main website on the training videos tab. And I'm going to go over that within the next second or two on the slide moving forward. So how do you go ahead and get access to this Fanvil management system? You could just contact and send a link describing your contact. Typically, you could provide us with what classically is your support at yourcompany.com and give it to sales or contact your local Fanvil contact. But one of the changes we did for faster turnaround is we've also armed our distribution channel to be able for them to offer you this link as well. So you can contact either one and they'll be able to pass you with this link, and then you can give this company address and information, and then you can move forward from that point. How does that link look like? It's going to look like this, sent to your specific email address. And once you activate this link will be valid for 3 days. So once you get this link, you may not have immediate time to dig through and go in, but what I would suggest is you go ahead, you activate the link, and then you can define what your login address and password is so that you can take that information and move forward and really dig deeper into this system when it's convenient for you. But if you don't do it within 3 days, you're going to have to start the system all over again. Okay? So let's start talking into the key features, and this is kind of where we get into some of the key features about statistical analysis. And really what it boils down to is really breaking out our dashboard screen. And here in the dashboard, just to give you a little bit of background, which I'm going to log on, all of the different tasks that you'll find is located on the left side of the screen. And here you'll note that this whole dashboard system really gives you an overview of all the different devices that you decided to go ahead and deploy using this system. And you can actually import a lot of the systems from your legacy devices into here. We don't necessarily have an automated bridge, but some people have elected to do that. But this is something that you may want to consider doing moving forward. We have a language device you can set. Right now, the 2 languages of support is both English and Chinese. And then you can go ahead and set up your organization here. This is really listed as Fanvil, but you can set up different organizations right here where you can put in your own company name as one if you want to put in your company, but you could also put in your local library, police station or hospital, schools, etc. All these different organizations here that you can modify and check on the different pull down menus here. And I'm going to show you where that belongs coming next. Now, when you look at task management, this is something that you can go ahead and really kick off on the left side in the task management and really define what you want to do. You can do things like reboot the device from a remote location, do a factory reset in case something really goes wrong, or in case there's an employee that goes out of the office or changes jobs. You may want to take that phone and reconfigure it to do other things, upgrade firmware, update the configuration file of that phone, and then you can do it basically based on the time frame that's most convenient for you. And you can have really a log of all of the different tasks that you have listed that comes up, and it gives you an idea of whether or not it's actually timed out or whether or not that task was done successful. And you could have a breakout of those specific MAC addresses that you might want to revisit again for those that had a problem, say doing the firmware update. And also you could have those that are listed as failed as well. So really all of these things come back and you can really kick these things off, whatever that's convenient with you. Now, having said that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of click onto you, as I mentioned, to do some of the cloud-based systems here and be able to really log in. This is my login screen, and this is the login screen that you will get as well when you log in. Well, for those who speak English, you can go ahead and make sure you specify English specification when you log in, so that you can understand the screen as you move forward. And as I log into the system here, this is just really my test account, nothing really proprietary here. I don't have anything that's here, but this is just for illustrative reasons. Everybody has a default account that's listed up here in the upper left-hand corner here. And in this default account is something that it really defaults to. This could be your organization, but you can click down and really see where you could have organization B and C. And as I mentioned earlier, this could be other organizations that you've set up where you have, that's the organization, and many of the subcategories that you have faced here could be really sub-organizations or sub-departments that you may want to break out. For example, if you want to break out the marketing department or the sales or engineering department all separately, you can do it whatever you want to do, or you could just keep it as one if it's basically an SMB environment, and you can do whatever it takes to modify your specific model. Under languages, as I mentioned, you have both English and Asian languages that are supported here. And then you could look at a lot of devices. This is just my test account, so that you could look at here, you just have one account. But when you look at the status, you could actually see here, based on my default settings, how many devices were online and how many became offline, and those that were never even configured. So if you got a dozen MAC addresses but only deployed 10, you'll end up seeing 10 that are actually online and one that is basically non-configured. You could take a look at the registration status if you wanted to, and really get an outline of the specific models. If you actually want to focus in on a specific model, you can go ahead and click that and get specific statuses that you want, as well as look at the type of organization and sites that you have moving here. I did talk about task management, and here I want to go ahead and go from the dashboard level into really one of the things that you really use this for a lot. And say here in task management, again, it has the same default, and you can actually identify the different organizations that you set up, which could be a library, could be a police station or something like that. I just kept it on default for your refresh, for your idea. And you would normally have a big list of all of the different tasks that you have done before in the past. And you can look at here as saying, what kind of task do you really want to focus in on? And in the back here, you can list reboot device, factory reset. You can update the configuration by model. Say they all want to have a new speed dial button to go ahead. You can update that config file, then upload it onto the system, and you can do that based on the schedule that you have done. You could do it immediately if you want to. So once you configure it and have that set up, or you can go ahead and schedule it so that it'll pop up at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're asleep, so that when they come into the office the next day, you can go ahead and do that. And you could also identify basically by a MAC device name here. You could enter the name or whatever device level. This is something that you define, so that it might be, a church or something like that you may define and want to put something here that brings your, raises your memory, but this is something that you can go ahead and define yourself. Now let's head back into other items such as task management. We kind of went over into this system. Now let's go on to the next screen here, and this is remote diagnostics. And in remote diagnostics, you can go ahead and really list out a whole history of the different types of things you can do. And again, as I mentioned here, you can list it basically based on the organization. So you can have, again, all those different organizations you set up. But once you enter the MAC address of really diagnosing a specific phone, in some cases, you may want to be hit with an authorization code so that you can't just go in and inquire to see the performance of the phones, but based on their authorization code that they give back to you, you could then have their acknowledgement saying, okay, you can go in and actually run diagnostic history. What do you get based on that? When you run post-diagnostics, you'll get everything from status of the account. You'll actually see what IP addresses have been assigned to that phone. You could look at system logs, capture packets, update configuration files, all of these different things that'll be provided. You could even grab a screenshot of the phone so that you could say, what does the phone look like now? You could really grab one and have that uploaded onto your system so that you can go ahead and see what is that all about. How do you go ahead and actually kick those things off? I'll go ahead and take a look at this system again, and when you look at device diagnostics, it's one level on the left-hand side above task, and when you click it, this is the exact same address that you have here. And say, for example, if you don't click in a MAC address that's familiar to the system or you, it may ask you for an authorization code. I'll just run some random number saying 5555. It says, this does not recognize it. You'll get some authorization code and you can kick off the diagnostics. And then from that on, you'll end up getting a whole history log of all the different diagnostics that you run. And it will give you all those specific reports that I just outlined in the previous system. Now, one of the things I want to also do is that not only does it do diagnostics per device and per organization that you set up here, you could also go to the system and actually have a total system log. You might be able to run a system log where it actually captures all of the different logs that you've done based on your whole organization, or you could actually, based on a specific organization that you set up here, or basically you can go ahead and sort it by end user or by site. You might say, oh, I made an update to the marketing department at this location. You want to edit by that site, or you can round it down to the specific device so that you can get an idea on how you want to manage those specific devices. Say, for example, we made a firmware upgrade to the X4U. Where have I deployed all these X4Us? You can go ahead and do an edit device and be able to really sort out all of the different locations that you have based on that specific device moving forward. This here is a level. This is here the system logs, which really gives the administrator traceability so that you can have a better idea of all of the different logs that you could do, and you can do it all based on timestamp, based on user, based on device, and you can really sort it out depending on how you want to go ahead and debug and isolate these faults moving forward. Last but not least, this is just the contacts and tools. The sales at fanvil.com goes into everybody, including myself. Just identify what region you belong to, and we'll make sure that that's a global address that every contact will be reached out, and you can do that. We also have tech support where you can reach out and send out any particular tech support. Depending on what region you have, we can go ahead and provide localized support as well, depending on where you're from. Documentation wise, in supporting documentation and firmware, I forgot to do that. You can go ahead and reach out to the support, and this is our social media contact for your reference. You actually do have these references in your soft copy. So to give you an idea on where our library, in case you want to go back to the old videos, this is really our main website, and you can go to support. And under support, you'll have things like download, where you can download our data sheets, our firmware upgrades, and all that. Then you can look at training video. And when you update the training video, you will actually see some of the legacy things that you'll find here, like version 3, version 1, version 2, of all of the historical things that you can actually get an idea of all the things that we did in the past, so that you can look up. But not only is it just our management system, but we also put in here things like how do you insert, the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi dongles onto our phones, or how do you transfer a phone? This is not only good for our partners, but also good as sort of a quick YouTube video, providing your end users with a good instruction booklet on how to go ahead and do that. Nobody likes to read through user manuals. I certainly don't, but everybody has enough time to set aside to watch a quick 5-minute video to get an idea so that they can go ahead and move on to the next step. So really, that's kind of all that I have today. I mean, the demonstrations, I didn't lead to it. I kind of went back and forth with all of the different key features. But now what I'll do is I'll set aside some time to really address any questions that might have been raised on here. I already have a few, so I'm going to go into the Q&A session next here for your reference. Some of the questions that I have, should there be sound? What do you mean by should there be sound? I'm not necessarily sure about that. I mean, all of our devices are SIP endpoints, so that you could actually promote sound if you want to, from your front end to the back end. And that's really that, including video. When you speak of video, some of our devices have VGA decoders inside them so that you can see high-level video as well. Is it possible to deactivate the cloud service for some phones? Absolutely. You don't necessarily have to. You can activate or deactivate some of the phones because you control what phones go in there. You can control what MAC addresses that you get. Say if you purchased 50 phones and you only want half of them on the system, you can go ahead and identify those MAC addresses, import them into the management system. And once they're in the management system, you could also define whether or not they're linked to our redirection service or not. So, you can have the redirection service linked to your specific PBX or your own proprietary provisioning service, or you can have it linked to our management services. It all depends. Many who are big asterisk and free switch type of providers, they don't necessarily have a management system, and this is ideal where you want to use both parties, and we provide that service for you. Another question that came up is, does FEMS have cost when installed on a premise server? No, in fact, this cloud-based system we provide as a free of charge service. We look at this as a differentiator, not for only our phones, but it also ties in all of the different other endpoints as network and access management. This is a free of charge service that we provide not only to our partners to manage their time, but also provides you with a way that you can almost add separated services to allow you to kind of provide that IT level service so that you can figure out these faults in advance of somebody else not being able to see. You could tell based on a failure report saying, hey, this device worked before, but now it's not working today. So you can get onto the problem before they actually find any access. Okay, that's about it. I think so far that's the system. I'll still stay on for as long as possible. For those who aren't necessarily listed, let me see. How is the system known given devices under the same site? Is it the user has to handle under the same site? Really, when it comes to how does the system know the device is under the same site? Basically, in order for this to work, much of these systems that you put in are based on MAC addresses. So if you put the MAC address in this account and you put it on the FDMS server or redirection server, it will actually go out and see who's going to be on it. Now, there are cases where you might take it from a previous device, and once you have it on the redirection device, that device belongs to you, so that if someone were to take out a phone from your deployment location and put it somewhere else, it's not going to work. It's going to basically be tied into your specific system, but you control, for those systems that are on-prem or off-prem, but the minimum is it has to really see the internet environment, and as well, you control the type of devices that you want this system to support. You could have it on or you can remove it depending on how you're doing it. So you're really in charge of how you want to deploy these systems moving forward. Okay. How is the cloud able to reach the MAC inside a LAN or any point open? When you receive these phones very often, say if you're an integrator, what you can do is you can ask the provider, or say one of our authorized distributors, to give you a soft list of the different MAC addresses. So when you receive 10, 20 phones, you will also get a soft file that's sent to you of all of the different MAC addresses that are put on there. Now, once you put it on there, what happens is that once you deploy the phones onto the site, now when that site, when this phone first wakes up out of the box, it will actually take its first look. When we all wake up out of bed, we either take a look at our side walls or in the ceiling, depending on whether you're a back sleeper or a side sleeper. But for a phone, when you take it out of the box, it'll say, the first thing it's going to look at is, let me go to the redirection server. If its MAC address is not located in the redirection server, it's just going to come up as a generic standard device, and that it'll just come up under its standard settings and say, okay, what do you want to do with me now? On the other hand, if it wakes up and it actually sees the redirection server, assuming that your internet access is working, it'll say, oh, I belong to Dr. Jones, and Dr. Jones will go ahead and have its own provisioning service, whether it's his own or whether it belongs to a PBX, and that way the phone knows where to go from there moving forward. So that's kind of how the MAC addresses is realized, and once those two things have acknowledged it, then all of a sudden it will be also acknowledged by the management system as well. So it works from the phone out as well as the management system looking in, and when those two things match, you have a positive acknowledgement, and looking at the dashboard, it'll be registered at that point as a green device that'll be registered on both the registration site as well as your management system. Okay. So, anyways, that's kind of it in the background. Should a question come up after this, webinar, please, by all means, send your technical questions or your business questions over to sales or support at fanvil.com. It will get to our support team as well as myself or anybody else that's affiliated to support your region. I want to thank you again for your time in doing this. And for those who may have signed on late, there is a soft copy of this presentation that's available under the handouts so that you can go ahead and download a copy for yourself moving forward. Again, thank you for your time. Have a healthy week, and please enjoy your day moving forward. Again, thank you for your time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.